3, 2, 1, 0. Hi guys, welcome to another audio commentary, and this is actually a dual commentary with Diggity and Klazart, and we are dueling the opening matchup of Group C of the MSL round of 32 Season 4, and this is between Savior and Ruby, and wow, we had a few shocks, a few big shocks, and I'm here with Diggity, and Savior is just starting up in the purple at the 9 o'clock position, and Ruby is at the 3 o'clock position. This being Loki II, there being only 2 starting spawn points on this map. But I'm looking forward to an exciting match, an exciting series. Unfortunately, Moletrap couldn't make it with us today, so it's just going to be a duel.
Yeah, we're going to switch into duel poor Moletrap. He's having a bad week. And anyway, getting into this, Savior really hasn't been playing well lately. He had a really good game against Kanata, but almost every other game he's just been getting beaten or just not playing up to standard. Especially, he looked really bad against Firebat Hero in my opinion. And Firebat Hero did another taunt, of course, and Savior actually just stormed off. And really, since then, I don't think he's been playing fantastically. I think it might be because he's been going for more a fast, straight-to-hive build, pushing into kind of an Ultralisk and early Defiler type thing. And I think he might be trying to redefine his game and that such, and he's putting down that spawning pool now. So going for a 9 pool, he might be going for an aggressive push here. I'm surprised he's going for that. Maybe he's going to try to deny that early scout, deny the information, and putting down the gas. So this definitely suggests to me that he's going to commit to some early link push. And that doesn't surprise me. Actually, no, going to cancel there. So probably going to just do the Ling Harass for a little bit of show to deny the scout, then put down that second hatchery. I'm not surprised because these guys have a lot of history. Ruby has won the last 2 matches, so Ruby actually being the Savior killer, but before that, Savior knocked Ruby out of the last season MSL in a really spectacular fashion. I mean, it was an under 5-minute game. It was ridiculous. He absolutely stomped all over him. So this is going to be kind of a reproving for Savior because he has dropped 2, and a little bit of action for Savior or for Ruby. Ruby really needs to prove that he is that top quality player that can go deep in the MSL. Although honestly I don't think he is that player, but plays really well against Savior, so we'll see how this match goes.
Yeah, it's interesting to see Savior diverging from his normal strategy and going 9 pool here. That suggests to me that he's a little bit irked, that he's a little bit unsure of himself. You usually wouldn't expect him to see that. Savior very cleverly hiding his drone just at his natural expo to allow the enemy SCV to go by and not actually harass him. And now his lings are out, so Ruby's going to be anticipating those lings and going to try and get a defense out. But he's only got a single rack, so he's going to have to put some SCVs at the top of his ramp to actually block off Savior's initial lings. And again, to me, it's a sign of a lack of confidence from Savior when he does something like that. I have to say, I wouldn't have agreed initially that Savior hasn't been playing well recently, because I didn't see the games with Firebat Hero, but the games I did see before that was the game in versus Nada and Kanata, and I thought he was quite masterful there, and Ruby indeed getting a few SCVs out to block that ramp off. So it'll be interesting to see. I think the fact that Savior's gone 9 pool won't be too bad, because it can be a problem if the opponent is fast expanding. The whole 12 hatchery build is designed to counter an opponent fast expanding, and since Ruby doesn't seem to have gone for that, at least initially, although we can't see because we can't really see his protected expo, he might have gone for a command center there. But provided Ruby hasn't fast expanded, Savior should still be okay with this build. On the other hand, and now Savior actually putting the 3rd hatchery down, so Savior going for 9 pool into 3 hatchery, and I guess he was just a little bit worried of some sort of early rush or some sort of early push by his opponent. Definitely this map, I find it interesting. I think and Ruby actually getting the academy up, so Ruby's is taking up quite early. He's getting the academy up, and it'll be interesting to see whether he comes in with an early medic and marine push, and Savior might find a little bit difficult to defend against that, since he has invested in that 3rd hatchery.
Yeah, interestingly enough, I think what Savior's strategy here is to do that 9 pool, basically to force him to take the protected secondary and then immediately go to Mutalisks, where SCV got there behind the lines. I'm sure he'll be able to kind of push it through using the drone, I should say SCV trick at this case, but probably trying to force him to take that protected secondary, which is a lot more open to a Mutalisk attack, and he's gonna, wow, kind of, it looks like he is in fact going to take that unprotected secondary instead. So Savior, I'm not sure if that was necessarily his intention, but I think that was his overall intention, putting a Firebat out there as well. In fact, he is pushing up with 4 Marines, a single medic, and a Firebat, and we'll see if Savior can handle this. He does have looks like a Sunken Colony going up, so I think he did spot it out, 2 going up, which is actually more than he needs to fight this off. Ling's out in the field spotting for him, and really I like that 9 pool build because he does have the protected and unprotected secondary, and as a result he can get right back in. There's a couple Lings pushing in. If they can take care of that Firebat, they'll actually might be able to get into the main happening. They're going to be able to get in the main, scout this out, see the single barracks. Ooh, that's going to be absolutely devastating in the long run of Savior. I mean, seeing that single barracks, he's definitely going to start pumping units at this point. Well, actually, no, he'll probably go for Mutila's Harass, and I think he realizes how effective that can be, simply because only a single barracks. We'll see, and I'm not quite sure. I'd like to get back and see how Savior's doing as far as layer tech goes, but I think he might be able to, if he pushes a little bit quickly. I don't see a second gas down actually for him. But if he gets a Mutalisk Harass out in any sort of decent time, actually no, going for an Extractor, so he is going for that new build he's been doing, which is kind of pushing to Hive Tech. And really, that's disappointing. I think if he'd gone for a Mutalisk Harass, that would have been very successful, but so he's not going to be able to exploit that single barracks. In the meantime, more barracks going up for Ruby at the moment.
I've got to agree. I think that's a little bit disappointing by Savior, only now going to lair. I think Savior seems to be playing far more defensively than I'm used to him seeing, and you might say it was a little bit of a genius stroke by Ruby when he had the Firebat and the Medic out relatively early on, even though he had a couple of Marines. Savior obviously hadn't been able to scout into Ruby's base at that point when he saw those units with his initial Zerglings, and I think that led Savior to believe that perhaps what he was getting was he was going to be at the receiving end would be a fast Medic and Marine push, maybe a 2 racks push, and that forced Savior to invest in 2 Sunkens, further slowing him down. I think the other thing for Savior that I think the mistake he might have made was he went for that 3rd hatchery straight away. So even though he went 9 pool, he didn't really get the benefit of putting that early spawning pool down and instead getting a layer up easily. Had he gone for the Extractor before putting down that 3rd hatchery, he would have been able to tech much quicker and get those Mutalisks up. But I think as it stands, there's a good chance that Ruby's actually going to be anticipating those Mutalisks. So I think Savior not really playing at his best today. He does seem to have surrendered momentum a little bit to Ruby. Ruby now getting that factory up as well. I don't see a lot of turrets going up, though. I did think I saw an engineering and Savior again going for that hatchery at the 5 o'clock expansion. So Savior really spreading himself a little bit thin, and that hatchery could easily be taken out by that Medic and Marine Force should it venture out. I guess Savior counting on his Mutalisks to pop out. There's still a little bit of time before those Mutalisks pop out, and I think Ruby's probably going to have enough time to actually get defenses up. He's got that engineering up as well. So Ruby playing quite comfortably, playing a little bit audaciously as well, not too worried about. And we look here, Savior's got 3 Sunkens, and Ruby's barely pushed at him. So I think that was a relative masterstroke by Ruby, revealing those early Medic and Marines, getting that academy up very early on. And it just seemed to kind of force Savior to spend some resources where he shouldn't have had to.
Right, this is definitely, this indication of taking that hatchery in the bottom right hand corner definitely speaks to me that he is in fact going to go for fast Hive Tech. He needs to get that extra hatchery and that extra gas, basically, so we'll have the supply. And I think Ruby feels this coming because that Mutalisk Harass, first of all, isn't coming. It's coming late. He's faced this before on Blue Storm and he's beaten it. So really what I expect him to do is after this starport, get a second starport and just start pumping science vessels, because that worked for him before against this build. And there's a few Mutalisks coming in, but a very late Harass. I'm not sure how effective that's going to be for Savior, and definitely that hatchery out there, and yeah, Medic Marines pushing up into them now, and this is going to be devastating. I think it looks like Ruby is acting like he's seen that hatchery and those Mutalisks. It's hard to do Mutalisk Harass when your opponent is just kind of forcing you to engage them. It's kind of like the carrier scenario, and as you can see, yeah, Ruby has and all his defensive is up, and this has really been a standard build actually recently from Savior, trying to get that Sunken colony up, and really kind of the key of this when you expand out there is using a Nidus Canal to kind of cover it, but he's nowhere near Hive Tech. I'm surprised he expands so early. I don't see him defending this at this point. It could, Medic Marines just picking off a couple of Mutalisks. I think he might have lost 2 in that stroke, so I'm not sure he's even have enough to kind of pick these off one by one. Just trying to buy himself enough time to get those creep colonies up. We'll see.
Savior doing a great job of using those Mutalisks to hold off the Medic and Marine Force just at the ramp, where it is a little bit narrow. But now those Medic and Marines are down, and I don't think the Savior is going to be able to defend this base. Certainly if Savior loses his base, he's going to be far behind. The Medic and Marines now are pummeling away at the Sunkens. Savior managed to kill off a couple of the Marines. One of the Sunkens is up, but he's got no further Sunkens up, and he's losing Mutalisks. He's bleeding Mutalisks out. The other Sunken comes up. He's only got about 5 Marines left. Savior needs to take out these Marines. More Mutalisks arriving. Savior looks like he's going to be able to defend this. Brilliant by Savior. Great defense. Beautiful. He's actually managed to successfully defend this. Brilliant defense by Savior. I'm really impressed. And this might actually give him a way into this game now that he's actually managed to take out that force. I was going to say that the momentum was firmly shifting in the favor of his opponent before that maneuver, but Savior might have a chance now. I just felt that Savior spread himself too thin too early. His tech was too slow. He's only now actually building his hive, and I think there's still opportunity if his opponent pressured him. Savior doesn't really have any units except for his Mutalisk. One of the things that's normally a hallmark of Savior's play is getting those Mutalisks out relatively early, and he can do that quite easily with his 12-hatch build, where he gets those Mutalisks out quite early, and his Mutalisk harass actually hurts the opponent a lot and keeps the opponent in the base, whereas in this instance, the opponent was actually wandering around the map long before Savior had those Mutalisks out, and I think that was one of the things that's made a difference in this game, where he's allowed his opponent to really have his economy virtually unharassed. And I think that's very dangerous when you've got a Terran player whose economy has been unharassed, who hasn't had to invest a lot in defenses early on to counter an early Mutalisk build. And I don't think that this is a great strategy personally. I think Savior, maybe he feels that because his 12-hatch strategy is too familiar. But I mean, I don't think I see a reason to change it. I don't think too many players are countering it too well, and I think it works well for him. Even if he wants to go for a 9-pool strategy, I think the way to go with a 9-pool strategy, and Savior was going to try and do a little bit of harassing, the way to go for a 9-pool strategy is to take advantage of that early spawning pool to actually get your tech running up early. I don't think it's a great idea to go for a 9 pool and then try and get that hatch tree, the third hatch tree up straight away. I think you're better off getting a few Mutalisks or trying to tech relatively quickly, getting that layer up quicker, and you're absolutely right. We see the 2 engineering bays and the 2 starports, so we're going to have a flood of science vessels, but at the same time, I think Savior's doing okay. He's not doing too bad. He's got his 4 expansions. He's got his high building. If he can combat those science vessels, I think Savior might actually be able to come out with a win here.
Yeah, and those science vessels are just absolutely devastating against this build. That's how a lot of players have gone up bidding. And Savior's sensing it. He's going to try to push him with the Mutalisks here. And a couple Scourges, he's pulling back now. I think that's just a hunt squad. He's going to try to use those Mutalisks to take down as many science vessels early as he can. The Ultralisk Cavern's now up, so he's going to be pumping Ultras in a few seconds here. And we've seen a lot of Zergs, actually, Zerg players kind of using this build. I'm not sure why. That's one advantage having that hatchery out in the field and using the Nidus Canal, is he can send those Ultralisks to the bottom right-hand corner and then immediately flood them into the base a lot faster than he would otherwise. Putting down the Nidus Canal, as you can see on the other side near his main, so he can push in. So his front door is completely sealed. He doesn't have to worry about it as much against the Medic Marine Force, and his Ultralists are going to be fairly mobile. But still, at this point with the Zerg economy like this, it's so gas heavy, you still have to, it's so key that you defend your hatcheries. You're not in a small gas build. You just have to spend so much money there, and a ton of Medic Marines coming out. And so he's going to have to expand one more time. My question is where can he expand and where can he defend it? It looks like he's going to the upper left-hand corner, and that's going to be really difficult. Really, in this build, that's kind of been the hallmark of Zerg losing, is a large science vessel force comes out, and the Medic Marines can go wherever they want. The Zerg players kind of spread out, and even though they have a lot of Ultralisks, they just can't seal it, and they end up getting a field that can really effectively do anything. So we'll see if that ends up being the case.
And now we've got Ruby moving up with a very large force, 5 science vessels already, with a couple of groups of Medic Marines, and very uncharacteristic of Savior for me. Obviously, I haven't seen those games with that build where he's done virtually no harass, and he doesn't have a large enough force really to defend any single point, and I think that's that's going to be difficult for Savior to defend against such a large force, because he's only got a handful of Ultralists, and none of them they're not upgraded. And that's the other big disadvantage in my view of this build, is that you don't have lurkers. You do not have lurkers. The enemy's got Medic and Marines, and you don't have lurkers to actually hold them back. And I think that's a big deal. Yes, you've got the Ultras, but and now a couple of Scourges coming out, and Savior almost intercepting those science vessels, and Savior pulled those Scourges back at the last second. He turned them around, and that millisecond gave Ruby the chance to actually save those science vessels. Otherwise, he would have picked off 2 or 3 science vessels. Savior actually pulled the Scourges back and then sent them in again. And unfortunately, that was unfortunate for Savior. And Savior investing a lot in Sunkens, and this is very uncharacteristic play for Savior. He's literally kind of bunkering down versus the Terran player. Now all those Ultras getting irradiated. Savior trying to bring those Ultras in to fight with those Medic and Marine forces. And Savior is in trouble here, because there's a wall of medics there in front of those Marines. And brilliant defense by Ruby. He just moved onto the bridge, providing a narrow path for Savior to fight, and Savior couldn't really do anything against that, and Savior's lost the 4 or 5 Ultras he's essentially had. They're essentially all going to die now. Normally Ultras can survive and irradiate, but a little bit of damage from the Marines is enough to kill them. So Savior's lost all of his ground force, having done absolutely no damage to his opponent, and again I have to stress, Savior's done no damage to his opponent's economy from the start of this game, and really I'm befuddled by this play by Savior. I don't think it's great. We've also got dropships coming in, and Savior's going to be in trouble now with this drop coming in for probably into his protected expo, it looks like.
But it looks like the Scourges are going to come up and push, and if he can survive, it looks like he's going to take out a couple science vessels. But maybe if they can intercept. No, actually, it looks like they'll push in. Here comes this drop right on the Defiler Mound. Mutalisk trying to defend here. The Sunken Colony, and that was a beautiful drop right in that corner. If he can take out that Sunken Colony, it's going to be really hard for Savior to now go in and push out of there. Probably going to lose both his Evolution Chambers and his Defiler Mound, and that's kind of the other worry I have about this build. I'm not sure why a lot of Zerg players have been switching to it and relying on it. And he's going to lose that Defiler Mound right about. Oh, maybe not. Darkstorm gets off right in time, but he's still going to lose that building. Absolutely devastating, and a huge, absolutely massive Science Vessel force now pushing up. More Medics Marines swarming around the front, and as you can see, I just don't think Xavier has enough to defend here. More Radiate going off on the Ultras, and really that's kind of the weakness here, is the Terran player can just irradiate those units out in the field while they're not doing anything, and that just absolutely minimize the damage. It just, really, I don't feel like you should go with a build that maximizes the use of Irradiate. And I know a lot of Zerg players have been pushing into this for some reason, but it just doesn't seem effective to me. And Xavier basically in the past 4 or 5 games is dedicated to this, and it just hasn't worked. I don't know why. And see another Ultralisk out in the open without any defenses getting irradiated, so again going to be minimized. And also you kind of have to dedicate some Ultralisks out by the Nidus Canals, and now Ruby pushing in with a huge force. Sun Colony's going to attack, and it looks like he defense matrix something in front. I'm sorry, that was actually an irradiated unit, and pushing in, and as you can see that the radiated Ultralisk going down very quickly. A couple links pushing in. Ruby absolutely lost nothing there. No Defilers there to plague or anything, and now I'm going to push up against these Sun Colonies in this Ultralisk. That Ultralisk is going to go down short measure. A couple links coming from behind, but it's not going to stop it, and Ruby I think is going to take the game right here. He's going to be able to take that natural expansion. These Ultralisks going in piecemeal, desperately just trying to throw those Ultralisks to get some Sun Colonies up, but it's just not going to be in time. While those Science Vessels just sitting there ominously in the meantime, waiting to radiate, and it looks like he has broken through. He is going to take that natural, and I think that's going to be GG for Xavier.
Yeah, I don't see Xavier recovering from this at this point. I think losing the Defilers then was really what did it for him. That drop, winning the game for Ruby. I think Xavier was still sort of in the game at that point, even though he was losing most of his ground units. I don't think it would have bothered him too much if he had been able to get his Defilers up and going along with the Ultras. He would have been able to fight back into the game, but once he lost the Defilers mount, that was it. He had no defense left. He didn't have enough Defilers building as he lost the Defilers mount to be able to survive in terms of defense, and his opponent just had too many Science Vessels and was just able to irradiate at will. And I think the big weakness of this build is not just that it causes the opponent to go Science Vessels, but I think the big weakness, we talk a lot about Zerg players not allowing Zerg players to basically play the game their way, not just letting a Zerg player grow unchecked, not harassing them at all, not forcing them at all. The biggest weakness in this build is not harassing a Terran player, it's letting the Terran player go unchecked, and that's what Xavier has done. I can't remember the last time I saw Zerg versus Terran with a Zerg 1 where he did not harass the Terran's economy at all and pressure the Terran at all. Xavier basically let the Terran play his way without no pressure whatsoever. Xavier was the one at the receiving end of the pressure through this build throughout the game. He was the one forced into early Sunkens and investing his resources in that. And really, I feel it's a bit of a nothing build. It can work against. Maybe it's working for him in practice matches. I don't know. I mean, CJ have got some pretty good Terrans in their squad, so I'm surprised to see Xavier using a build that just seems to be so illogical in so many respects, and see him sticking to it. That's very uncharacteristic of him. And the other problem I have with this build is not just intrinsically with the build, but I don't think this is a build that suits the style Xavier plays when he's playing at his best. I don't think it suits that, and that's my main problem with this build.
Definitely, it doesn't play into one. He's got some fantastic Mutalisk harass, and he's extremely good at kind of moving large groups of units across the board. And with Ultralisk, you're dealing with small groups. There's not a lot of opportunity to psychologically catch your opponent out of position. They're fast once upgraded, but it takes a long time to get to that position where you can really exploit their speed moving around the map. Xavier looking really disappointed there, tearing up a little bit. He's going to go on, and I'm not sure who's going to end up playing in the winners match, but just looking out of it there, absolutely out of it, and he's looked out of it really since Firebat Hero. I think the Firebat Hero game might have clicked something in his brain where he feels like he needs to reinvent himself, but honestly I think he just needs to perfect what he's good at, and I feel like that's kind of the same way with a lot of other players that are also in the MSL mania. I think he just needs to stick to his dropships, go with what works until people prove that they can beat it, and I don't think people can. I think there's a few players here and there that can beat the standard Xavier, but not when it's at its top level, and really we haven't seen Xavier, I think, at that top level in his comfortable position in a long time.
Yeah, he looked almost to recapture that versus Nada in the Ungame Net Duel tournament, but I've got to say, it's just this is very uncharacteristically. It's just not Xavier watching him play this way, and it's important to have variation in your gameplay. It's important to not play the exact same strategy every single time. However, that being said, that doesn't mean he has to go for these completely off the wall strategies that are just, I don't think they have a very high success rate. I think he should still keep his his 3-hatch build, his 12-hatch build as his staple strategy, and occasionally throw in a variation to keep his opponents guessing. And even there, again with the 9 pool, I don't see what's wrong with the standard 9 pool early Mutalisk harass. You know, that's okay. It is a standard Zerg strategy. Yes, counters are known to it, blah blah blah, all of that. But there's enough variation there within the Zerg builds and within Saviour's own builds that he doesn't need to resort to this kind of stuff. And he does look absolutely out of it. And this is shocking to me, after having not in the sense that Saviour's been dominating recently, and just to see him lose to a relative nobody is shocking. That's not what's shocking. What's shocking is that we've already seen Bisu go out of this competition. We've seen Nada go out of the on-game net deal tournament, and now I'm worrying that we might actually be losing Saviour. And wouldn't that be terrible if both Bisu and Saviour were out of the MSL at such an early stage of the competition?
It really wouldn't feel like an MSL competition without Savior, without Bisu. Maybe Nada can come back and be one of the old schoolers in it. But yeah, MSL without Bisu and Nada without Bisu and Savior just feels kind of awkward almost. Those are the two staples of the MSL. They're the champions. They're the big rivalry. And I don't know. I have to say I've seen this build work once, and the other times, yeah, they just get outworked by the science vessels. Even out of 2 bases, I've seen that happen with, I can't even remember, it was C versus somebody. But really, I'd like to see maybe a variation on this build. I could see maybe it working with a few more hatches down, and instead Zerglings and Defiler combination with maybe a Mulus or 2 to plague the science vessels, but just the straight to Ultralisk, it just doesn't seem to be working. And I hope that Zerg players push out of this and just kind of write this build off, but it looks like a lot of players, Savior in particular, are just going to try to perfect it to their own demise, apparently.
Yeah, I've got 2 problems with this build. I've only seen this build now once. This is the first time I've seen this build effectively in execution, and I've got 2 big problems with it. The first problem I have with it is that it just doesn't put any pressure at all on the opponent right from the get-go. There's just no pressure whatsoever on the opposing player. There's no harassment of their economy. The other factor of the no pressure is the fact that when you talk about really good players at StarCraft, or really as opposed to average players at StarCraft, the really good players are the ones that can multitask, the ones that can cope with harassment while harassing their opponent as well, while pressuring their opponent. They can play all the mind games. And this build seems to just make it so easy for the Terran player, because the Terran player doesn't have to do anything. He just fast expands and sits there until he's ready to move out, because his opponent isn't really building any units until they get to Ultralisks. Excuse me. So there's really no pressure on the Terran player, which really for me allows the mediocre Terran player to play well, because they don't have to cope with Savior's legendary harass. They don't have to cope with being penned back in their base and not having any idea of what's going on in the map, not having any map control, not even having an idea of Savior's tech most of the time or exactly where it is. And that's the typical way they have to play blind. Whereas with this map, there's a lot more freedom, and they can dictate to Savior what they want him to do. The other problem I have with this build is the fact that Zerg tends to be weak at a few points in the match. Zergs, first of all, tend to be weak. They tend to be exposed to that early medic and marine push, first of all. Then they tend to be exposed towards a tank push. And in this case, we didn't have a tank push, but we had the medic and marine and science vessel push. But the whole idea of Zerg is to delay the mid game for the Terran as long as possible, prevent the Terran from getting to their end game for as long as possible, to buy themselves time to get into their end game, because it does take a while to get those Ultralists up and running and getting to that end game, and this literally just completely ignores that factor and tries to just get straight to the end game. And I just don't think it's going to work against a half competent Terran player, because they're always going to be, especially if they're being unpressured. I just don't think you can actually do it fast enough, and I don't personally see this build working ever, to be honest.
Ever? That's quite a statement. Any other thoughts you have, Clauser?
No, shock and disbelief, disappointment really with Savior's play. I hope he can pull it back in the next game.
Ruby, I have to give to Ruby, he had a little bit of poise there. He definitely did everything he needed to do, but honestly it was easy for him. There was no pressure whatsoever, and honestly it's complete turnaround from last season's MSL, where I saw Ruby absolutely panic under Savior's pressure. Anyway, I think I'll wrap this up. Thanks for another, wow, I think this is the first dual commentary I've done with Clauser, so I hope you guys enjoyed listening to that.